there's two fights left. There's Randy Couture versus Mark Coleman, and there's Serra versus Frank Trigg. And I wanted to spend a little bit of extra time talking about these two matches in particular. I'm going to start off with the main event. Do you know, more and more often in the UFC, the main events are hosting people who are either extraordinarily better than the person they're being put up against, in which case you're talking about most of the champions at the moment. BJ Penn, you know, whoever he fights is going to be a little bit of a, how do you put this nicely, they're just not going to be quite as good. Again, Anderson Silva, whoever he fights, you know, he has problems of his own, obviously, with being a counter-striker and being boring, and possibly being bored. But you can usually say that whoever he fights, you know, the person is going to be not quite as good. GSP, you know, the same thing. You might accuse him of cheating, but again, it still sticks. Three of the champions, if they're in the main event, are usually sure picks to win. The other thing the UFC at the moment are doing, I feel, is a little bit like stylised fights. They're putting a lot of oldies, particularly in the heavyweight division, matching each other. Sometimes they only have consequences in terms of their names. You know, both Randy Couture and Mark Coleman have very, very large names. They have pulling power. They have legacies because of what they have done in the sport and because of who they are. But whether they fight and who wins actually doesn't matter. It's not going to change the leaderboard in terms of champions. They are ageing. They can fight, but they are never going to be significant in terms of making groundbreaking history again. I don't think. That's my personal opinion. And so matches like this one, where you've got Randy Couture versus Mark Coleman, is a little bit of a, for old time's sake, sort of matchup, you know, the sort of dream matchup you'd have. Mark Coleman really illustrates a time previous to what we've got now, a time previous possibly to weight divisions, a time previous possibly to Zuffa even. That's what he represents. An age where if you won once or twice, you know, you established yourself as a legend. Randy Couture is quite different. He really does personify the age that is just probably about to finish, where he's still fighting at a great age. He has had to make up a legacy of fighting a number of champions in a number of different weight classes to get his status as being, you know, a legend, to solidify his legacy. Had the two met 5 odd years ago, this match might have meant something. Now it's really an exhibition match, and personally I'm just not interested in it. I think it's lovely. I think possibly these two have earned the right to be able to face each other in a match that doesn't matter, just for the sake of fighting, perhaps. But for the general fan and for the sport, it's not going to do very much. The other thing I think is that the past is never quite as valuable as the present. No matter what happens in this match, I think, you know, politically speaking, neither of them are going to finish each other off. It's going to go to decision, and Randy Couture is going to win it no matter what. Unless Coleman is just so obviously that much better than we've seen him before, you know, I think it's a done deal with Randy Couture. So, don't know how I feel about that. I guess it finally proves that mixed martial arts has now a long enough history to be able to do these sort of exhibition fights, and for them to mean something sort of just because of the history of the institution. You know, it's more than 10 years in age now, and you can now have golden oldies fighting each other for old time's sake. The other match is Serra versus Frank Trigg, two of the world's biggest twats, basically. Frank Trigg, you know, mouth like that, Doesn't matter what he's doing, whether he's in professional wrestling, whether he's in mixed martial arts, no matter what, he shit talks, and he's just not a nice person, in my opinion. Matt Serra, you know, the two deserve each other. If it's possible to find a bigger shit talker and a bigger twat than Trigg, it would be Matt Serra. And particularly from my perspective, being quite a fan of Hughes, and Hughes having had his chance to sort of go up against both, both were, you know, pretty ugly to him. And to be totally honest, he beat both of them hands down. Now we get this interesting thing where they're fighting each other, and it's a win-win situation because they're both going to be shit talking, they're both going to be doing their best to beat each other, and nobody likes them. And it doesn't matter who loses and who wins. It's a win-win situation because somebody you don't like is going to get squashed, and that's what matters. Now, I personally think that Matt Serra will win. I just think he is just that slightly bit sharper. I think he's possibly slightly more with it. His record isn't quite as good. You know, Serra is 9-6, Frank is 19-7. So he's got 10 more. You know, double the amount of wins, plus one more loss. But I don't think the experience is going to help him here. And, you know, nothing would make me happier than to see Matt Serra choke out Frank Trigg. Preferably in the third round so that we get our full, you know, amount of tit for tat. But I think that's how it's probably going to go down. So that's my prediction.